Hi, I'm Carol,
Hi, I'm Lisa.
and we are the
We're the
Grief
Grief
Gurus.
Gurus.
In today's video, we're going to talk about routine and why that can be so helpful to us when we're grieving. Now, Lisa, when you were first grieving all those years ago, were you able to put in place a routine? Is that something you even thought about? No,
Not
me
at all.
neither. Me neither. And would it have been helpful to you, do you think?
It would have been so helpful. And I think I didn't have a routine because I was a caregiver for my daughter and I didn't even know what a routine would have looked like. Everything I did, if I got to sleep, whether or not I got to eat, or what that looked like, it was all dictated by her needs,
Mhm.
which is so often the case, right? Did you find that as well?
Yeah, I was pulled in so many directions. I was working, plus in the end,
Mm.
of course, caring for Brian, and then he was in a hospice, and so everything was oriented around him and everybody else in my life except me. And I've got to say, when people would say to me, "Are you taking time for yourself?" I really wanted to roll my eyes and go, "What time? What are you?" That's not what I thought. I thought it in much heavier words, but I thought, what are you talking about? And now, with years between then and now and an understanding of grief, I wish I knew how important that could be to take time to create some sort of routine, really to anchor your day, really to get you through the day so that you knew what was coming, so that you didn't just sit on the sofa, which I did a lot of. We talked about the lethargy of grief, but I think having a routine of getting up at a certain time, and it depends where you are in your grief. You may not want to shower or get dressed early on. We get that. We do. But gradually creating something to say, well, I should eat. At least I'm going to schedule 2 meals a day, or I'm going to do a little bit of exercise. I'm going to do a couple of stretches, or I'm going to connect with somebody. There's something to add into our routine because it gives us something to follow when everything is so out of control. It's almost like taking back a little control for yourself and how you're going to manage this grief.
Yeah, it does re kind of engage, help us feel that sense of control. But also, our viewers might be wondering, like, well, what do you mean by routine? What goes into a routine, particularly when you're grieving? And if you're not working, which I didn't go to work right after my daughter died, so I had a lot of time on my hands. I eventually was able to use that time to go back to school and become a pediatric ICU nurse, kind of in her honor. But it took a while, and I think if you have to go back to work, that has drawbacks and also some hidden benefits of, as we're saying with the routine, if you do have to go back to work right away. So there's that little bit of built-in cadence.
Hmm.
But if you don't, yes, you can sort of lean into this idea that you just feel like you don't want to do anything, but without the demand of a job. So it can go both ways. But I guess what I'm saying is, as you think about trying to install some type of structure or routine, what are the things that you might consider? One is, as you touched on immediately, sleep is a huge one. I
Mm-hmm.
go to bed at this time, I get out at this time, and maybe you're not sleeping that whole time, but figuring out that, for at least 6 to 8 hours in the evening, whatever time that starts and stops for you, because we're all very different with our what our body's rhythms and needs are, getting that in place. Food is another big one. Obviously the type of food has a big impact on our body. That's a whole nother video.
Yeah.
But even saying, okay, these are the times of day that I'm going to intentionally nourish my body,
Yeah.
it does help to have those things in place. And then I would invite others to think about, what are the things that restore me. So as you said, connection, maybe
Mm.
making sure that at one every 24 hours that there's at least one 5-minute period or longer, if you can tolerate it, where I'm connecting with someone that helps me feel less alone. Not that I'm taking care of, not that I'm
Yeah.
consoling their grief,
Yeah.
not that I'm pretending I'm fine, but true connection. And that might not even necessarily be a face to face thing, it might be a phone call or something like that.
Yeah.
So anything that restores us. Exercise is another big one. You mentioned
Yeah.
that. but our bodies really crave, this is something I didn't know when I was deep in my grief that I know now, is our bodies deeply crave routine. And the more that we can automate some of these things, in the
Yeah.
beginning, it does take energy and it's exhausting because you think, oh, now I've got to, make myself a routine. One more thing I've got to do. You don't know what it's like. Well, that's true in the beginning. And it does take a little bit of planning and a little bit of structure. But once you set it, it's that, phrase, set it and forget it. It's like, at least if you have it in place, then it does start to kind of take on a cadence and a momentum
Yeah.
that doesn't require any thought. And that can be a real saving grace.
I think so. I think it's that automaticity, isn't it? If we know, okay, the alarm's going to go off, I'm going to get up, I'm going to have a shower, I'm going to make breakfast. Now I've got 3 hours. If you're on bereavement leave, perhaps you're like, well, now what? Well, maybe if you set, every, morning I'm going to go for a walk, or every morning I'm going to do this connection call, and then it's lunchtime. And as you do it, it gives you something to do
Mhm.
besides being totally in your grief. And we touched on that dual process model a little while ago in another video about
Mhm.
how we can be in these loss oriented activities such as crying and yearning and being sad about our loved one. And then we want to be in some restorative ones, which a routine puts us in, so we can oscillate between the two. So you can find time, set aside time even in a routine that is your 15 minutes or your 13 minutes of really sitting with your emotions and your feelings and your grief, crying, looking at pictures, whatever that is for you. You can set time in a routine for that. And then you can do something else that's a little more restorative. And I think, as somebody who went back to work way too early, it does give you something, it does give you structure, but it can be extremely tiring. And I think what we need to do is create a space in our routine to grieve, because you put it aside when you go back to work, and that can be a good thing. It can be a good thing to not be grieving all day, but you can't keep it pushed aside. You still have to allow for those emotions. And that, I didn't know that, and I wish I had known that and thought, okay, I'm going to come home, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to set a little time and just breathe into it and just breathe into it. So I think routine can be such a helpful coping mechanism or strategy for us to sort of get through this grief, to get through those early days, so that you don't have to think about it too much. You just know you're going to do this, that, and the next. And as I said, it feels like you are doing something to help yourself, which is important.
Yeah, and I think so often at the time that we lose someone, we don't have a routine, or at least we're not as proactive about creating a structure for ourselves. And I remember, during the COVID years, and our son, I have a son who's an adult with special needs, and he's very intense and complex and requires a lot of supervision and support. And during those times, I was so overwhelmed with his care that I literally sat down and created a schedule that was broken up into quadrants. And it
Yeah.
was Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. And I used those quadrants as an opportunity to reset myself each time. In other words, if the stuff that went, and I was working full time during that period, in addition to having all of the caregivers for our son being taken away because of COVID, that I was able to, if one quadrant shit the bed, for lack of a better word, going into, okay, now it's noon. Now I'm moving into my afternoon. I don't need to carry that with me. I'm going to reset and I'm going to go into my deep work, kind of quadrants. And
Love
there's a lot
that.
that can be developed. And then, at 5 or 6 o'clock, when I could be not working anymore, it's shut down complete, computer screen closes. And okay, now I'm in my next quadrant, which is family time, which is time to have a good meal, time to wind down. So it can be very overwhelming when we're first in grief. I know for myself, I didn't want to move. I didn't want to
Mm-hmm.
breathe. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even want to be
Mm-hmm.
alive. But even really breaking things down into segments of your day, this is the part of the day that I am in a grief related activity, like allowing myself to sit with my grief, this is the part of the day that I do something productive, whatever that
Yeah.
might be, however I define that for myself. So definitely breaking things up. And I was cracking up a little bit when you were talking about the schedule, because it occurred to me that, God, we put everybody's stuff in our calendars, don't we?
Yeah.
We put
Except
their
our own.
appointments. Yeah. We put their, their travel plans, their appointments, their schedules. And it's like, why is it so hard for us to say that between, 7:30 and 8 in the morning is my time for reflection and journaling? Or why is it so hard to say that after 8 o'clock at night, I don't respond to electronic communication?
Yeah.
Whatever the things are, it's a very personal um, cadence that we develop for our own needs and our own body and our own kind of mental, but inviting us to start thinking about what are the things that give me a better shot at actually feeling okay when the day ends. Early in grief, we're not thinking about having a great day. It doesn't exist.
No.
But how can I give myself a good chance of just getting through this 24-hour span without feeling like I don't want to live? Like, that's a pretty reasonable goal when you're in fresh grief.
It
So,
is. It
yeah.
is. And I think I love your quadrant idea. And what I really loved is that whatever happened in quadrant one, if it didn't go well, you leave it behind. Don't bring it into quadrant two, which of course we tend
Yes.
to do, don't we? We carry everything through the day and it mounts up through the day. So I love that. The other thing about routine is that if you have a set routine, it takes less energy, and we have very low
Yes.
energy. We've talked about the lethargy of grief. So if you can do anything to just conserve your energy, it's a good thing. So I hope this has been really helpful for you as we talk about routine. But Lisa, I want to ask you, you recently had a lot of snow. We all had a lot of snow, and you did a beautiful post on this to really remind us why routine is
Wow.
important. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I surprised myself, honestly. I knew that we were having a shutdown, and it's been almost 2 weeks that my son has gotten back into his adult day program. And during that time, I was almost maniacal about making sure that I got up to exercise, making sure that I got my meditation in, watching what the foods are, watching my alcohol intake, because I am a wine lover and I tend to, oh, well, it's a snow day, so why not drink, more than once a week or whatever it might be. And what I found, and I'm glad you brought this up because it really is a nice illustration of,
Mm-hmm.
as the days were going on, I wasn't finding myself wanting to just, check out. As the days went on, I was noticing things that were hard. I was noticing, things that I was actually able to get through without the turmoil that I might have experienced in the past. And because it was such an extended period of time, I can really compare it to other times when it's been like, you're going to get a snowstorm, you might lose power and all the things, because in our home, because our son has so many requirements in terms of support and just everyday life, he's fed by a feeding tube, he can't manage his own activities of daily living, getting dressed, toileting, things like that. And what I realized was, by having this routine and giving to myself on the front end, I mean, it wasn't easy. It was difficult, but I didn't set myself up for, a period of feeling like I was going to go off of a cliff. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, it's living proof. When we are more proactive, we automate certain things. I had more energy. I
Yeah.
was sleeping pretty well through the whole thing. And when I did lose my cool, which always happens when you're the primary caregiver for someone so intensely all day, every day, I didn't lose it the way that I was embarrassed about or regretted. It was just more like, oh, yeah, that makes sense because this is a really hard week or 2 weeks. I didn't
Yeah.
feel so the whole self judgment thing that comes up for us and the whole, criticizing the way, like all of that just didn't even come into place. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
not exactly the same as being in fresh grief, but it does speak to the power of automating some things and
Yeah.
really saying, these are the things that I need to give myself the best shot at getting through this 24-hour period.
So
So
important.
it's
So
really
important.
true.
Thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. And thanks for being here. If something resonated, please go ahead and just like our video. We'd love to have you subscribe to the channel. And as always, check us out at thegriefgurus.com, and we'll see you in the next video.
Bye-bye.